Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this past week was filled with news about the upcoming MacBook Pros finally launching hopefully this year, as well as an upcoming iMac, iPhone 13, additional details, a new iPad mini finally coming as well as iOS 15 Beta 3, iOS 14.7, and much more. This is your news update for the week of July 11th, 2021. And the first thing is when Apple was developing the M1 MacBook Pro, when it was in the works, it does take a few years to develop their own silicon and those sorts of details. Apparently, the VP of Worldwide Product Marketing, Bob Borchers, thought that the MacBook actually had a problem because the battery indicator was not moving. It was such good battery life that they thought they had an issue, and that's definitely true with this M1 MacBook Pro. It just gets battery life all day and then the next day. About 20 hours, and that's about right. So it seems like it's broken compared to anything else, especially other Macs, and it has incredible battery life. So I thought that was a pretty good story that they thought it was broken themselves. Now, if you have a HomePod, some users were saying that iOS 14.6 was bricking their HomePods. Also, the latest iOS 15 Beta 2 update for the HomePod, if you were on the HomePod betas, was bricking those as well. Apple today, not too long ago, pushed out an update for that HomePod with 15 Beta 3. So hopefully we'll see something like that very soon with the iPhone. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now, with the iPhone 13 and 13 Pro Max, apparently this year, those will be the only devices getting the LiDAR sensor again. There were rumors earlier this year saying that all models would get LiDAR, and that makes sense based off the dummy models or the dummy units I've shown you before, where you have the cutout for the LiDAR sensor on the Pro models, but not on the regular models. And also, DuanRui on Twitter posted some molds that the case makers are using where it shows kind of what they look like as well. A better look at what the camera module looks like. And then also we posted another photo from a case maker that shows how large the camera actually is in the new 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max. You can see this is a case from the iPhone 13 Pro Max put right on top of the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and that camera layout looks much larger. The module seems to be much larger, and hopefully that's because we're going to get a much better sensor setup inside. That would give better stabilization, better low light performance, and maybe even 8K, although I haven't heard anything about that lately as well. Also, just the Pro models are said to be getting the 120 Hz displays this year. So if you're going to get the 13 mini or 13, apparently they won't have a 120 Hz ProMotion display. That will be coming to the iPhone 14 lineup, where all of them will get 120 Hz displays. This is according to the elect. So maybe we'll see that, maybe we won't, but I would love to see 120 Hz on all the models, since that seems to be something that iPhone doesn't have that pretty much every other phone has at this point. So maybe we'll see that this year, but it looks like it's more likely to be next year for all models. But at least the Pro models seem to be getting it this year. So for those that matters a lot to, they'll probably be picking up the Pro. Now, the iPad Pro this year with the M1 iPad Pro, the 12.9-inch variant that I'm holding here has the new mini LED-based display in it. The 11-inch didn't gain this display this year. According to Ming Chi Kuo, though, the 2022 iPad Pro will have mini LED on both the 11-inch and 12.9-inch models. Now, the reason for not having it this year could be due to display shortages or some other issue, or maybe they just wanted to leave it for 2022. But it would be nice to have in both models, so it looks like we're going to get that in 2022. Now, a lot of people have been wondering, where is the iPad mini? And according to Mark Gurman, that's coming very soon, as soon as this fall apparently, and it will look very similar to this past year's iPad Air. So the iPad Air that I'm holding here, the 4th generation, got the squared off edges similar to that of the iPad Pro, but it gains Touch ID. And the iPad mini is said to have the exact same thing. So you would have Touch ID just like the Air. Now, it would also have the A14 or A15 Bionic CPU inside, which makes a lot of sense, having the latest design and the latest CPUs, and Kuo has also said the display would be 8.5 to 9 inches. However, that doesn't make it very mini, so we'll have to wait and see if that's something they're going to actually do, or we'll just have a smaller display like we did with the older mini. Now, many people thought it wouldn't get a redesign, and it would look something like this. This is actually a dummy unit that was supposed to be the iPad Air that was released that never got released, where it would have Touch ID. It apparently will not be released like this, and instead will look like the iPad Air. So I'm glad everything's sort of going to the squared off design for the Air. I really like the overall design, and maybe it will use the 2nd generation pencil as well, so we can have all of the devices using that also. Now, as far as OLED iPads, Apple is apparently still working on that for 2023. They would first come to the iPad Air with maybe a similar size display, and they were apparently concerned about burn-in on the iPad, as many people leave them on all the time while they're working, so you could have a higher chance of burn-in. However, we've seen other tablets with OLED, and Mini LED makes a lot of sense for HDR workflows, but for regular use, just viewing and things like that, OLED works just fine. So it makes a lot of sense that they would transition to OLED on some devices. However, it looks like they're all in Mini LED, or all in on Mini LED. And speaking of Mini LED, Apple is continuing to put Mini LED in its devices. Kuo is saying that the redesigned MacBook Pro is coming later this year with a Mini LED display as expected. Apparently there was some delay, some people have said, where we thought we'd see it at WWDC, but they just couldn't get enough displays ready in time. Now, also with that new MacBook Pro, it's said to have different ports on it. So instead of just having Thunderbolt, we've talked about this in the past, where it would have HDMI or an SD card slot. And according to Luke Miani on Twitter, he said that it should have a UHS 2 SD card slot. So it would have a faster speed slot like the iMac Pro, for example. And he's also saying that the upcoming MacBook Pros will have a backlit Touch ID button. So Touch ID would be backlit. Maybe it will look a little bit different, closer to maybe the round ones we've seen on the iMac keyboards, or maybe it'll just be backlit like this without the touch bar in general. So that makes a lot of sense if the whole keyboard's backlit, and maybe it's a see-through Touch ID button. It's hard to say, but Luke is saying we should expect that as well. Now, as far as those new upcoming MacBook Pros, the 14 and 16 inch, they're apparently going to have an M1X CPU, not an M2, for example. M1X is apparently reserved for the Pro lineup, according to Dylandkt, where the M2 would be reserved for the regular lineup, such as the next generation MacBook Air, the one that we saw before that looks like it will be more colorful and have a newer CPU, and then also maybe a mini LED display, according to Dylandkt. Now, I'm looking most forward to the new higher-end iMac or larger iMac, 27-inch or 32-inch, whatever Apple decides to make it. Mark Gurman had said that Apple had taken a pause on that iMac to finish the 24-inch iMac. Now that the 24-inch iMac is out, they're working on the next one, and that should be coming fairly soon with an M1X or M2 CPU. Now, we don't really know for sure, but whatever Apple calls the next CPU is a bit of a mystery, but I can't wait to see what a larger iMac is capable of with whatever their Pro chipset is, whether that be in the iMac or upcoming MacBook Pros. I really can't wait to see that. And then finally, to do with the Mac, Dylandkt is again saying that upcoming Macs will also have 1080p webcams. We've seen that in the iMac, for example. We should see it very soon in the MacBooks. It makes a lot of sense. We've had lower quality ones for quite some time. Seeing that they would need a little bit thicker sort of display for mini LED, it makes sense that they could finally fit in a larger webcam as well. So I can't wait to see them do that. So as far as all the hardware, that's it. But a lot of you want to know, when is iOS 15 Beta 3 and iOS 14.7? And iOS 15 Beta 3 seems like it could come at any moment. Apple's been releasing betas late in the day, so whether or not that's after I'm making this video or the next day is hard to say, but it looks like we should get iOS 15 Beta 3 this week at least. It could be tomorrow, it could be Wednesday, it could even be Friday at this point. However, I really think it'll be probably tomorrow or Tuesday. So that seems to make the most sense to me. Also with iOS 14.7, I would expect a release candidate this week as well. That could be later in the week with maybe a final release early next week. That seems to make the most sense to me right now. But again, Apple has been very difficult to predict lately with its software updates. It used to be pretty consistent. Every Monday through Wednesday, we'd get an update depending on what day the previous one was released. So if they released it on a Tuesday, for example, it'd come the next Tuesday if they're on a weekly cycle. Right now, iOS 15 betas are on a bi-weekly cycle, generally until August, where we go into a weekly cycle with a final release in September at some point. Generally, mid to late September, we'll see the final release of iOS 15. 14 updates, iOS 14, I would expect updates until the end of August, when we get closer to the iOS 15 public release. So whether or not we see 14.7 this coming week, and then maybe a 14.8, or maybe they'll just have small updates after 14.7. That's what I would be hoping for, 14.7.1, if they need to fix some Wi-Fi issue, for example, something like that. So hopefully we'll see that very soon. Again, I expect it probably tomorrow at this point, but you never know. They could even release it right after I make this video, as it seems like they're their time frame for releasing updates is very random these days. Now that's it for all of the news this week. I can't wait for the new MacBooks, for example, and to see something what could be possibly more powerful than an M1. M1 is crazy powerful right now, and a Pro version of that should be pretty incredible. But let me know what you're most excited about in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I always do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.